Not so long ago, in the mysterious land of Toronto, Canada, Scott Pilgrim was being discussed on a podcast.
Hi, welcome to So to Speak. I'm Lyle Groniger. I'm joined with my friend Josh Weinberg today. And, like the title said, as the title card said, we are discussing Scott Pilgrim today, because it's our 64th episode. Get it? If you're too young to get it, get out of here. I'm just kidding. Last time we talked about computer games, and now we're talking about a series that's almost entirely based on Canadian culture, dating, interpersonal relationships, garage rock, and video games, which is all under our wheelhouse, so I like that. So, Josh, what was your first experience with the Scott Pilgrims? Like, did you read the books, or did you see the movies first? Or the movie first?
I saw the movie first.
Oh.
I remember seeing it. I believe I saw it in the summer of 2010 when it had first come out. I think sometime. I know it was probably August or September. I don't know if it was right away, but it was the movie first, then the video game, which we'll talk about later on.
Oh, of course.
And then it was until, I believe, 2013 or 14, certainly a few years after the film came out, that I read the graphic novels and got into the rest of it from there. But I definitely remember really liking what I saw all the way back then at like age 18. So that shows how long I've been around this thing.
Oh, yeah. That's good. I actually read the first book first. It was at my school library. I read it, and I felt kind of naughty because there were so many references to more adult things like dating and like getting around and hooking up and stuff. And I'm like, oh, they're swearing. Am I too young for this? But I liked the first book. I was hooked. I'm like, oh, it was the only one they had. So for years and years and years, I never got the full picture. And then the movie came out, and I watched it, and I didn't really get it when I was younger because I didn't know what city life was like because I was a small town boy. But all my other friends were like, yo, no, this is actually how people in Toronto act. And I'm like, oh, well, that's where I'm going to film school. Yay.
Yeah, well, like 10 plus years later, do you think that that's still mostly true as to how people from Toronto act? Because, I mean, I'm relatively small potatoes myself. I don't go to Toronto that much. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
I met some people who act like people from the comic and the book, people who act like the comic and the movie, where it's kind of like they have way too many things on their mind, and they're very, like, droll and kind of like, yeah, whatever. That's cool, man. Let's go drink some steam whistle at Sneaky D's. Oh, wait, no, they drink something cheaper. But yeah, since we're on the topic of the books that were written by Brian Lee O'Malley, I suppose, are we going to go through each of them, or just, like,
we'll do a bit of a gist, because for those that don't know, the Scott Pilgrim series was published from August 2004 to July of 2010. So over half a decade, spanning a lot of different character growths and development, and I'm pretty certain a good chunk of the film was being developed as the final volumes were being written. So when you see the comparisons between what ends up getting abridged from the respective volume into the actual movie, I think there's a YouTube video that goes into more of that in detail.
Well, it's crazy.
It's nice to see.
It's crazy because they actually started writing a film script by the time the second book was released.
Yeah,
they didn't have.
That's one of my issues with adapting print to film, especially with a certain fantasy-themed premium cable show that ended a few years ago that ran into the same problem.
Oh, yeah. Don't remind me.
But that's none of my business.
Me neither. I dropped off way earlier than that. But, yeah, it is interesting that they started. That must have meant the first book must have been wickedly successful to catch the eyes of, like, producers and stuff for something that wasn't even completed.
It was more the publisher, Oni Press, was, like, trying to shop the project around. The
Oh.
neat thing about the actual origins of the series is that Brian Lee O'Malley was inspired to create the series after listening to Canadian band Plumtree's single from 1998, Scott Pilgrim.
That's a good song,
And
yeah.
So he basically used that as the inspiration, obviously in name and in style, for the character. And of course, that song by Plumtree, along with their song Go, will also be on the film soundtrack later on.
That's right. Yeah, I have right here all 6 issue, well, I guess compendiums of the story in hardcover color edition. That's pretty wild. I actually got these from a barter. I used to go on these trade sites on Facebook, and this one guy was like, I was looking for like the entire series, and this guy was like, hey, give me a bottle of vodka, I'll give them to you. So,
well, I mean, there's one way to drink responsibly.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a pretty good trade, not gonna lie. But it's funny, I had a little chat with him after he gave me the books, and they're all in great condition. And he's just like, yeah, I like Scott Pilgrim, but I think his other books are like far deeper and far better. I think Scott Pilgrim's a tad overrated. I'm like, I can't argue with you. I can't argue with you because I haven't read the other books, or if, I haven't had really much of a vested interest either. But like, yeah, his other stuff looks a little bit more out there.
Lost at Sea, I think you would actually like. I've started reading a little bit of it. It's obviously got more depth than the Scott Pilgrim series, but it's a more fleshed out story, and it's still got that same style he has in this. On the topic of the compendiums, I've definitely seen a lot of people, because I sometimes go on the Scott Pilgrim subreddit, there's the Evil X's edition of the compendiums, which are pretty neat to come by as well.
What are those?
Basically the same idea as the ones you have, they just have the Evil X's on the covers.
Oh, on the front covers. Yeah, that makes sense, because he encounters a new one in every issue, so...
Yeah. And there was also a box set with like an Honest Ed's shaped, like an Honest Ed's type of logo on the side. I think that sold out pretty quickly, among other re-releases, revivals, things like that. But now we must get into who exactly is this supposed hero of this quest we're supposed to be following.
Well, he's a kid in his early 20s who kind of just slacks, and he's unemployed. And he kind of just dawdles about in his band Sex Bomb as a not so great bassist. He's kind of just like listless, honestly, and a little bit like what's the word? He's pretty forgetful and clumsy too. He basically kind of has the appeal of a protagonist, but not really so much the determination of a protagonist. Until he meets Ramona Flowers. Oh, I should also mention he is dating a high schooler at the time of the first book, Knives Chow.
Yeah. 2004 conventions will do that.
Oh, that was a common thing at the time? I didn't know that.
I wouldn't say it was a common thing, but one thing with like stuff like any form of media, some things age well, other things age not so well. And the whole idea of someone being 23 dating someone clearly in high school, I mean, even then, I'm sure it might set off a few red flags, and that idea is explored throughout the series.
Oh, I thought he was 22 in the beginning, but yeah, even still, like, it's pretty...
He later turns 23, I believe, in volume 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah, it's 3 and 4, and then by the last chunk, he's 24, so... Yeah, but even still, that's kind of a weird age gap, and definitely something that a lot of people would raise an eyebrow to, but we'll talk about that more at the end. So the first book establishes Scott and his band. He's having a pretty chummy relationship with Knives. Like, it's not physical, of course, but it's just like it's very non-challenging for him because he recently got out of a really rough breakup with Envy Adams. So when he goes to a party, he encounters a girl named Ramona Flowers, who he's encountered in his dreams and all that, and he's very smitten by her almost immediately. Not really so much. She doesn't feel so much the same way. But eventually Scott kind of has to, like, decide whether he wants to keep up with Knives Chow or if he wants to, like, get with this girl who's far more... She has more of a mystique to her. And so he kind of gets with her anyways, despite still being in a relationship with Knives. They have a date. She introduces him to, like, the inner... I forget how it's phrased. It's like the interdimensional portal thing that she can do.
Oh, the subspace highway.
There you go. Not to be confused with Subspace Emissary from Smash Bros. Brawl. But, moving on. Yeah, so after a pretty exciting date with Ramona, he decides to break things off with Chow, which definitely will come up later. And so things are kind of hunky-dory. And the band's about to have their first show, and out of the blue... Well, not so much out of the blue. He was warned ahead of time, but Scott being Scott, he just didn't bother replying. Matthew Patel bursts through Lee's palace and it's like, Scott Pilgrim, I challenge you to a duel! And that's where the hook of the show is. You know, the hook of the story is
If only it were a show too.
It should be a show. You're right. But the hook of the story is basically Ramona has 7 evil exes from her past that have all grouped together to basically defeat Scott. And Scott must prove his might as well as his commitment to Ramona by defeating each and every one of them, the best he can, anyways. And yeah, no, for a first issue, it hits all the right notes. It establishes the band, establishes Scott and more of his personality, some of the conflicts he has. There's a little bit of like a love triangle going on, and it's just this. It ends with a pretty wicked battle at the end. I mean, I've been in Lee's Palace. I don't know how you'd be able to fit an entire fight in there with all the cramminess, but it's still a pretty fun issue. It's a bit of a shame. I see a lot of people make like votes. I did this one voting. There's this one poll. It's like, who's your favorite Scott Pilgrim character? There was Scott, Ramona, Knives, and for some reason Matthew Patel, and he got like 3% votes. I'm like, he's just an introductory like boss. You can't really say he like steals the show, unfortunately, but like he's still like fun just out like he makes an impression because he's kind of like he thinks he's a lot more fashionable and cool than he really is. It's like, pirates are in this season.
Well, something that is initially hinted at every time sort of we get more origin about the exes from Ramona, you get the idea that, and this is something that the graphic novels sort of delve into a little more in the movies, that both people in this relationship have their fair share of baggage and their fair share of flaws that they haven't really dealt with in a long time, if ever.
Yeah, that's right. Because like as established, Ramona is the one who typically always dumps the person that she's with. She's never been the dumpy.
And I'm not certain if it's a commitment issue, if there's trust issues, if it's just, you know, a wanderlust type of thing. I don't believe it's ever fully elaborated, but
no.
The fact that the amount of time she's actually spent with these people ranges from a period at recess in school one day to like maybe a few months or a few years at most. I'm not certain of the exact maximum length, but suffice to say that like the feelings must have been strong if they go after him this intensely.
Well, it's funny because you don't get this so much in the movie, because in the movie every ex kind of acts exactly the same, but in the books certain characters have like certain levels of like interest in this project that they're after, like going after Scott, and it's actually hilarious in some instances, and we'll get into that in the second book, which we can get into now. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
You know, the one the movie takes its title from.
Oh yeah, it's probably the most apropos title, to be honest. It basically just shows more like Scott and Ramona getting together and Knives getting jealous. And there's a movie star in town named Lucas Lee, who's this big...
I was informed it was Captain America.
Oh, I was informed it was Human Torch. Or Casey Jones.
I thought it was that one guy from that teen comedy that everyone forgets was a thing. Well, was a thing in 2002.
Not another teen movie? Is that the one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Not another one. Yes, but anyways, Lucas Lee, who's a movie star, comes to town, and Wallace, Scott's roommate,
the best character.
I agree. He's definitely the one who's got his shit together the best out of everyone in the story. And the idea is that Ramona basically she extrapolates more of the reason as to why Scott has to defeat all the exes. And, what I really like about Lucas Lee in the book as opposed to his movie counterpart, not knocking Chris Evans, he does a fantastic job, but, like, in the book, Lucas doesn't really give a shit about any of this. He's just kind of brought on because he's the second ex, and he literally just hits Scott once, then he picks him up, they sit down and have a chat. It's just like, look, I'll literally pay you. I don't really want to fight you that badly. It's all water under the bridge. So in some aspects, he's actually one of the more mature exes who's kind of just moved on and had a career and everything.
Yeah, because he literally he's in Hollywood, so obviously any sort of conflict wouldn't do well for his image.
Oh, that
Even
too.
the way that the conflict is quote unquote resolved is kind of an afterthought. Like, if he wasn't in the league, he could very well have just been a side character the rest of the series.
That would have been cool, but I do like the fact that Scott just says, "Hey, you see that really precarious rail that goes down that staircase? I want you to grind it. I bet you can't." He's like,
I bet you can't do a thingy on it. It's called a grind, bro.
"It's called a grind, bro. This rail's garbage."
The rail totally.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah. No, but then in the movie edition, like Matthew Patel's pretty accurate in the movie, but in like the movie version, like Chris Evans is just like a total pompous ass. And like
that's who the character, at least what most of the character is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like at
least only to Scott. Like obviously Wallace sees like hey, big fan.
Hey, big fan.
Why wouldn't you be?
Why wouldn't you be? And he's just like, I love how every ex always talks like this, like they're almost trying to do a Christian Bale impression.
I love the one like, Mr. Lee, you're needed back on set.
I love it's like
the dialogue.
The fight scene in the movie is a lot more interesting. Like basically Lucas just like he just brings out his entire stunt team. He's like, "What can I say? I'm nothing without my stunt team. Go get him." And they all fight, and he just like grabs a coffee and receives a funny tweet. And he's like, "Ha, that's hilarious, actually." Yeah, and they still do the skateboard thing, and it's still great. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's like a twist at the end of the second book. I mostly, as soon as the boss is defeated, it's just kind of like a preamble. Oh, we are established that Scott and Ramona go to a concert, and what makes the third book, my personal favorite out of the bunch, interesting is that not only does Scott meet Ramona's ex, he also meets his own ex, Envy Adams of Clash at Demon Head.
Awkward.
Oh, just a little. Oh, the third.
Well, that was the first time I'd heard of the video game that inspired the band name of this, and it's established throughout the series that the Clash of Demon Head is a legitimately a fairly big band for that particular scene.
Hmm. Yeah, it's they're popular. They're getting like albums out, and they're filling up like venues and stuff. They're pretty big, and Envy's like a superstar and a diva. And I love the third book the most, and not just for the obvious reasons, but just because like it's just so much more like the stakes are so much more awkward, and like Scott has to deal with a lot in this one more so than the other two, because he has to deal with this complicated baggage with Envy, and Ramona has to like she doesn't like Envy either. She thinks she's a total bitch, and then you have a total douche like Todd Ingram, who is like probably next to Gideon probably one of the most hateable like exes, because he's like self-absorbed. He thinks he can get away with anything because he's a rock star, but the worst part is that he's really good at what he does, so it just goes by the wayside. Oh, and even worse, he's vegan, so he thinks he's better than everyone.
The thing with Volume 3, the neat thing about Infinite Sadness is that instead of it just being a basic climax where Scott has to fight Todd, they essentially have a sort of pseudo showdown in what is the now defunct and like now demolished Honest Ed's.
Yeah.
It was originally supposed to be some sort of scavenger hunt, but then his Todd's psychic powers destroy the whole place, and just like it's a little bit bittersweet seeing this landmark is sort of partially immortalized and stuff like this, because now it's become condos in the decade plus since these books came out.
Well, yeah, it's getting there. Yeah, it's too bad.
And then we kind of have, we kind of learn about the band, the Clash of Demon Head's drummer, because Todd was doing her as well.
Oh yeah, like you do.
And it turns out she has, an artificial arm, as you do.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
Why not?
Oh, and I love how, like, Ramona ends up fighting, like, Envy because she can't stand her anymore. And, and I love how, like, unlike what happened in the movie, Envy's the one who gets hit by the secret G-spot touch of death. Just knocks her right out.
Oh, that is a difference. I forgot that's a difference between the books and the film.
That surprised me, because, like, in the movie, Envy kind of just shows up for that one section, like, just the third section. And then, but like, Yeah, it's in the movie. It's done to the fourth X, which we'll talk about next. But
There is an interesting plot point in that this is brought up, I think, in an earlier volume where when it's brought up that Scott's hair is getting long, he immediately puts a hat on and wants to move on to another subject because the last time he got a haircut was right before he broke up with Envy, and ever since he's been cutting his own hair to avoid having to deal with that. So clearly, even something as simple as like an innocuous comment can be taken the wrong way, which is a bit of an interesting character point.
yeah, I suppose. I think doesn't Ramona change her hair in this issue? Like it used to be like
Ramona and her hair length and color is actually a sort of interesting universal theme because it gradually gets longer, and it seems like she will change her hair on a whim, maybe because she doesn't like the idea of settling down or of things staying the same for too long. So there's probably a grander metaphor in there.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Scott gets an extra life at the end. Like, what are you doing? Getting a life.
Yeah. I gotta admit, the movie tackles the vegan police a little better. In the book, it's just he's at like a yogurt shop and he's just eating frozen yogurt with the drummer, and she's like, "Isn't that a bad thing?" It's like, no one will ever know. It'll be our little secret. And then, like, just in the middle of the battle, just when you think Scott's about to die after failing to win a base battle, which was the best part of the movie for me.
Yes,
oh my
the base
god.
Battle.
I actually tried learning that, all the stuff that Todd was doing, but some of it's a little bit technical, like the hammer on pull, like, that throws me off, but the rest of it I could do.
Was that supposed to be the theme to Final Fantasy II? I feel like it was.
Oh no, Scott does play that, but that's during practice.
Yes. The neat thing about various volumes is for some of the Sex Bomb songs and other musical moments, they will actually have a rough tablature of that in the book so people can try playing along with it. That was a nice touch.
I liked playing the burrito song after Scott loses his job at a Mexican place. He's like, the wonderful, magical burrito place. What an awesome job.
Yeah.
I like that song.
Scott is not a great songwriter.
Well, yeah.
But then he does get it together for Volume 4.
Yes, he does. So after the amazing, really, really dramatic heights of the third book, we have the fourth one, which I actually kind of like, not gonna lie. Actually, it has something that stands out for me, and that's just because it doesn't really focus on action so much. It's actually more... It's kind of like a nice social kind of book. Like, everyone's hanging out at bars, drinking, going to Sneaky D's, which is another locale in Toronto that's now shut down for the sake of building more condos. I know, depresses...
As far as I know, at least.
Depresses us all. I know. But, yeah, this is it's just a very cute book. It's just like... It's nice to read in the summer. I of all of them, it's the one I like to look through the most because it's a little bit more optimistic, and there is some, like, unnecessary romantic drama with, like, some girl named Lisa who was established in the second book who went to school.
One of Scott's old friends from high school. He and Kim and Lisa actually formed a band. It's established in the second volume.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, they do this in Scott Pilgrim versus the animation, which we'll get to in a bit.
Yes. They
actually shows that Scott rescued her, Kim rather, when she was kidnapped by students from a rival school. So it's like there's even more sexual frustration or tension there.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of like mamby-pamby, like, oh, it almost feels like a sitcom sometimes. And then there's that really weird part in the book where like Ramona hooks up with like Roxy Richter again.
Well, because she's the fourth evil X.
She's the fourth evil X.
They have Ramona insist on him saying X is. So like, well, at least they were with the times.
Yeah, because she's the only female X she has.
In the movie, though, Mae Whitman's portrayal of Roxy is actually really good. Like, the whole, like, subtle, like, I guess, subtle fury building. You know, that whole, like, By Furious line.
I love that line so much.
Like, and, of course, I'm sure we'll get into it later with the film, but one of the more quotable lines is, "Oh, you punched me in the boob. Prepare to die, obviously." You know, because if you see Superbad and then you see this, the late 2000s, early 2010s was full of boob punching jokes for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just caught on. The first boob punch I ever saw was in Mallrats, so I don't know. Although that was more of an
right.
elbow than a punch, but the same idea. Yeah.
But I like the idea of Volume 4 being a nice sort of break from the action, and you get more proper character development, because while in the first volume you kind of get Komo's party, where you see Como, and also we forgot to mention Julie.
Oh yes,
and
fucking
course,
Julie.
Scott's sister Stacy, who those two work at a coffee shop together.
Yeah, second
Stacy,
cup.
of whom is a natural gossip, and Julie is able to generate sensor bars with her mind.
Well, yeah.
And never fucking mind how she's doing it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have that such power.
Yeah. It would save my neck a lot if I did. I like the final. I don't mind the final fight in the book. It's basically. Oh, we also forgot to mention that Knives' dad appears in this book.
Mr. Chow is a badass.
He's pretty cool. Yeah, he's basically like this guy. He basically wants to avenge his daughter's honor by killing or defeating Scott in battle for breaking her heart. Because Knives has shown up periodically throughout the series to fight Ramona, or like just kind of like
yeah, because she finds out that Scott was cheating on her, or like either she was with him or Scott was cheating on her, on her with her. And there's a few fights, and there's the part where she tries to dye her hair blue to think, maybe that will,
get his attention.
Get Scott back.
Yeah.
She even tries dating another character we forgot to mention, young Neil.
Yeah, in this book she turns 8. I think she turns 18 in this book, and she starts dating young Neil. Oh, Neil. He gets really moody throughout the latter half of this series. I didn't expect that. He just basically hates everyone.
He's not really much of a focus though, for the most part, until towards the end.
No, he's kind of just there, which is I think part of the point. And the final battle with Roxy and Mr. Chow is just this massive homage to Ninja Gaiden, or Gaiden, or however you want to pronounce it. Gaiden, yeah. And it's pretty fun, but it was kind of neat to see her like get slashed in half, and she's like, "You have won this time, but he'll be next." And then she explodes into stuffed animals, and I'm like, "Yeah, like you do." Yeah, I like the fourth book. It's different, but in a good way.
Of course, near the end, Scotter, the power of love.
Yeah, that's right.
A literal sword.
Yeah, of course. Why would it be anything else? What other metaphor could it be?
Now, one thing we should have also mentioned is throughout most of the series, Scott lives in a basement apartment with Wallace, who is my favorite character because he just gives no shits, and he is blunt about everything, but he's also the funniest as a result. Yeah,
that's right. I remember... well, I'll tell the story later, but I just need to look up the characters in this one, because I actually always forget their names.
We haven't even talked about Stephen Stills.
Oh yeah, Stephen Stills. At this point in the story, he's recording an album, I guess.
With his roommate Joseph, who's
the guy
producer who we really don't know much about. But in the beginning, it's more like he's sort of the main creative force behind Sex Bomb, and he's really wanted to get more serious about the band.
Yeah, and his producer always talks in a quiet voice. Okay, the twins. What are the twins' names?
Kyle and Ken Kariyanagi.
Thank you. Yeah, so now we're into the fifth book, and I think this book is like probably the most devastating of the bunch. Just because, unlike in the movie, which it was still a cool fight, but in this one, the twins are pretty maniacal. Basically, instead of facing Scott head on, throughout the book, you see them building robots that always attack Scott when he least expects it, like when he's at a show for Sex Bomb. And he smashes one of the robots with his base. I'm like, Scotty, what are you doing? That's a Rickenbacker 4001. That you did not deserve that instrument. That it deserved better. Finer musicians have used that to their greatest advantage, and here you go using it like a baseball bat. That pissed me off so much. But another reason why this one's pretty dire is that Ramona and Scott, I think this is the one where they move in together, and they're settling down. But I think there's like some sort of is this where they established the glow?
The glow was established a little earlier, I believe, because I know Kim takes a picture with her phone of Ramona, and she shows her that there's like that glowing thing around her head, so it's not just Scott that's seeing it. And I think that might be towards, that is at the beginning of Volume 5, but there's this whole thing about a Halloween party that's the center of the smaller robot battle, then there's a bigger one.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kidnap Kim.
Oh, yes, and that leads to my favorite part in the book because it's a showdown between the twins. It's a little bit more downplayed than the other battles. It's very, very small. But Scott's kind of getting... he's being overtaken, and then Kim, with a very dead phone in her hand, she just pretends she gets a text from Ramona. It's like, Scott, it's Ramona. She's waiting for you. You can do it, Scott. Be brave. And it's just... And then Scott gets, he gets the second wind, and he defeats the twins, almost immediately. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go see my girlfriend. I'm glad I could save you, Kim, because there's a little bit of an awkwardness because they used to date back in the day.
Yeah.
And Kim's kind of crushed because she knew that Ramona didn't show up in his time of need, so there's that. And then it ends on a very, very painful cliffhanger where Scott appears into the room. He sees Ramona. She, kind of dissipates into the air, and he loses her, essentially. Now that she dies,
he gets a certain phone call from a certain somebody who asks him if he has time to die, to which Scott would respond he has no time to die, but then MGM sues him for infringement on a title for a James Bond film that won't exist for about 15 or so years. Maybe less.
Pretty much, yes. And now we're on to the final installment, Scott Pilgrim's Final Hour. Yes. This book takes a very long time to get going. I won't lie. It just kind of shows the angst that Scott's feeling after losing Ramona, and how he doesn't really...
He's got a lot to build up to, right? Because he's basically lost the woman he loves. A lot of his friends have either distanced themselves from him or just straight up stopped talking to him. Mm-hmm. So he's got to find himself. Not to mention, at the end of Volume 4, he encountered basically his darkest manifestation of his thoughts and sort of issues in Nega Scott. He initially rejects Nega Scott, but he's going to have a final showdown in this last volume. Yeah,
he does fight Nega Scott somewhere in the middle point.
Oh, yeah, and it turns out that after going on a wilderness sabbatical to Kim's home, which is in northern Ontario somewhere, it turns out he didn't actually save her from being kidnapped. He just beat up a random guy for no reason.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know if it was out of jealousy or something, but it's not a good look.
Yeah, no, Scott has some very bad memory issues, and he's very forgetful, as I've said, but that's because the seventh X, Gideon Graves, the true bastard that he is, somehow altered his mind, I think, if I remember this correctly. But it was just kind of an unforeseen byproduct, where it's his memories got scrambled, so he thinks he's the hero in every situation in his past, where he's really not. He's done some dumb things that has hurt a lot of the people he loves. Oh yeah, and Kim and Scott kiss in this one. That was a shock.
As a form of closure, I think.
Yeah, but they know they can't go through with it. And then he defeats Nega Scott, and then we get to the final showdown in the Chaos Theater.
Or so we think.
And then he goes to the Chaos Theater, which is an excellent Earthbound reference. And yeah, this is where the final confrontation. I actually have no idea how it plays out in the book. It's so needlessly complicated.
It's pretty over the top.
It's kind of crazy, yeah, because there's they go into a pocket dimension at one point. I think Ramona straight up dies at one point. She gets stabbed through the heart, unlike in the movie where Scott gets stabbed.
I think they both do.
Oh yeah, they both die.
Scott refuses to join the League, so Gideon kills him with the power of Love Sword. But then he wakes up in the desert, and he and Ramona reconcile. And remembering he got that extra life a few volumes ago, he goes back in. Everything gets done over, and essentially, this is also Andy Adams is doing a solo show there for some reason.
Yeah, Well, Todd died, so.
Yeah. Well, apparently, Scott is basically trying to. He realizes after absorbing Nega Scott that he accepts responsibility for his past mistakes and issues in relationships and why they didn't work. So he basically tries to, he kind of realizes that he's really no better than Gideon, and so he earns the power of understanding, which is a completely different story. It's like, Gideon, I think I finally understand you, man, and now I have to kill you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
So
they both die, but then it's like then Scott jumps into the pocket dimension, fights a really superpowered Gideon,
yeah,
overtakes him.
like a Dragon Ball Z anime style Gideon, like it's ridiculous.
I love the part where like Ramona's all bound like by like the wrists, and then she just snaps her restraints, and Gideon just kind of like backs off. He's like, "Oh, hey Ramona, what's up? You're right. Part of me does still belong to you, but the other parts of me are finished with you, and a billion
and it
clones.
All these different Ramonas. You know,
All these Ramonas.
See, there's a what if.
There you go. Oh, and then her bag gets destroyed. I'm just kind of skimming through this because it's a lot to comprehend, and most of it I don't remember very well.
It gets really intense, but then basically,
well, it's the climax.
Defeat him, and he explodes into a bunch of coins and rains down on the people.
Yeah, man, we didn't get paid, guys.
There goes our gig.
There goes
We're still getting paid for this, right? There goes our gig.
Facepalm. Yeah. So yeah, then Envy has a song.
Happy ever after.
Kind of, yeah, it is pretty happy actually. They
happily. I messed up the damn turn of speech.
They grow up together. Or no, sorry, they that's kind of a little ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, they grow from this experience. It's like a big showdown that really shows like the baggage that they dropped. Scott's like doing better at his job at the Happy Avocado. That takes me back to the day I worked at a vegan cafe.
And Stills and Joseph are an item.
Yeah, I guess. That kind of came out of left field, but yeah, whatever.
I don't know if that was ever hinted at. But
it wasn't.
I'm also not certain if that was the original intention for the character or not.
Yeah. Oh, whatever.
And, but basically, Sex Bomb ends with that, like, final thing at the Chaos Theater.
Yeah, and then Scott and Kim form a band called Shatter Band, which is a nice reference to Shatterhand, which is a pretty underrated NES game, too. Funny how all these kids really like their Nintendo.
I'm surprised that there aren't. If it wasn't remade today, they would all be Super Nintendo references, or hell, maybe N64, because that's totally back in vogue now. Am I right? Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack.
And yet, there's still no Earthbound port.
There's no Mother 3 localization yet, officially.
Still, that's so weird. Yeah, but so essentially, Scott and Ramona, they hold each other by the hand and they jump into the subspace. And
the screen pans up and it says continue.
They're very well paced in the fact that each issue introduces a new threat and a new part of the drama that Scott has to overcome, while also filling in interpersonal relationships and his feelings. I've read it twice so far. The first time I read it by myself. The second time I read it with Veronica, and we just read it out loud and we did all the voices. It's funny. Every time I talk
That's the best way to read.
It is. Every time I talk like Scott Pilgrim, I ended up sounding more like Deku from My Hero Academia, rather than Michael Cera, which is what I was trying to go for. And then Veronica did the voice to Ramona, and that was pretty hot. But moving on.
Save some of this for next year.
Next year, yes. The Valentine's Day episode.
The thing is, when we talked about the ending was kind of over the top, and it was a lot. I mean, O'Malley has said that the ending was actually the most difficult part to write, because he didn't actually really consider writing the ending until he actually started Volume 5, and he was hoping for the last two volumes to focus on one single story.
Well, yeah, and it was also coinciding with the production of the movie, so we had to kind of come up with two endings almost at the same time, because they weren't released simultaneously. But that's okay.
He only really expected the series to sell around 1,000 copies, and clearly it sold well above that.
Oh, yes. Yes, it was a huge success.
Why he ended it was he used a quote from Tintin creator Helge, the Belgian comic writer. So he had told his wife at one point, "And right now my work makes me sick. Tintin is no longer me, and I must make a terrible effort to invent him. If Tintin continues to live, it is through a sort of artificial respiration that I must constantly keep up and which is exhausting me." So, he said that he would be dead inside if he kept doing Scott Pilgrim in another 10 years. Ironic, considering that the book and movie have been re-released so many times, and other things have been re-released and affiliated with Scott Pilgrim.
Well, yeah, it is his most valuable IP, but at least he gave it a solid ending and didn't just keep going and going and going.
No,
Um,
he had at one point he did say maybe in a few years he would consider doing some more Scott Pilgrim related stuff, but although
hmm,
didn't need to be any more right now, he agreed quote more would be fun. This is from like 2013 or so.
uh, Still waiting on that, I guess. Don't hold your breath. Um, yeah, and then in 2010 we have ourselves a little movie directed by
Mr.
Miss
Coronetto himself.
yes, the Ice Cream Man, Edgar Wright.
Now, going from reading the graphic novels later on to then going back to this film, it actually a lot of it does fit, but I think even from like a stylistic standpoint with the screenwriting, Michael Bacall and Edgar Wright really did nail a lot of the quippiness of the graphic novels with the dialogue in here.
Oh yes, I would agree. Stylistically, it's right on point. Writing wise, it's on point. Casting wise, it's like almost
Yes.
dead on.
Again, it was that time where Aubrey Plaza was just like playing any sort of snarky, cynical, I don't give a fuck character.
Yeah, and then you have
And,
like a really young Brie Larson, and like a really
yeah, the alternate universe where Captain Marvel was a pop star.
yeah, and she was dating Superman and Adam.
And we got I think Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim was again a very maybe it was still probably typecasting, but you couldn't really find a better choice in that period than him.
Well, he was like the only one they considered because Edgar Wright, while he was like being propositioned with the idea, he was just like watching. He was like binging Arrested Development nonstop. He's like, I like this kid. He's a little young right now, but once I'm done Hot Fuzz, then he'll be ready.
Well, it's a good thing he did it before the fourth season on Netflix.
Yeah, yeah.
But
we don't like talking
Mary
about that.
Elizabeth Winstead does a really great job as Ramona. Again, your boy on Succession, Kieran Culkin, doing a great job as Wallace. Only now does he get to host SNL, not after playing Wallace. It's only Succession that brings in the money. But I'm not bitter.
Yeah, kick her in the balls.
Scott, I have to issue one of my famous ultimatums. Oh, your so-called ultimatums. It may live in infamy. Of course, we mentioned Chris Evans as Lucas Lee. We also have a post-Twilight, pre-Pitch Perfect Anna Kendrick as Stacy Pilgrim.
Yeah, that was interesting seeing her because it's weird. She's actually older than Michael Cera, and yet she's playing the little sister. And she was also dating Edgar Wright at the time when they were filming this.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That could have ended awkwardly.
Yeah, well, they seem to have been.
Hey, imagine if it worked out, we'd have an Edgar Wright cameo in the Pitch Perfect trilogy.
Oh, that would have been
Probably
cool.
the third one where it becomes the Fat Amy spy show. That's a topic for another time.
I've never.
I also this is a hot take, Jason Schwartzman is fantastic in just about any film he's in because he also really steals the show as Gideon.
Oh, he's so maniacal in this. He's like, you made me swallow my
Oh
gum.
my God.
That's gonna remain in my digestion for 7 years. And the acoustics in here are amazing.
Actually swallowed the gum.
The acoustics in here are amazing. Oh, he's just such a perfect asshole. Scott, kick his ass. And then we have to mention the music soundtrack, which is like super,
Oh boy, do we.
super cool. We got Beck, our boy, going to do pretty much all the songs for Sex Bombs as well as the Ramones song. And that's pretty great because like he started out like kind of like as a an alt rocker, kind of simple. He later transitioned to other genres, but it's kind of nice seeing him go back to his roots, doing all this garage stuff. And then we have Metric doing a song for Clash of Demon Head. That was excellent. I like how.
Black Sheep is great.
Sorry.
Black Sheep is great, and the fact that this last year they finally put out the expanded edition of the soundtrack, which adds in the version of Black Sheep where Brie Larson is singing, because so many fans were asking for a legitimate official release of that song.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I actually thought Brie Larson did sing the song, and it wasn't until later it's like, no, she's just singing like Metric, and they're like dubbing over.
The film came out in 2010, a year after one of Cody's favorite records, Fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say "Give Me Sympathy," but that was like around the time when songs like that were everywhere. We also have Broken Social Scene with anthems for a 17-year-old girl. Ironically, also a band Emily Haynes is in. And I mentioned
mention
we
the
have the
boys.
two Plumtree tracks, Scott Pilgrim and then Go, which was on the expanded edition. A song from also a person I share a birthday with, Frank Black. I heard Ramona sing.
Ah, yes, yes.
And a really nice deep cut with Blood. It's Getting Boring by the Sea by Blood Red Shoes.
Yeah. And then you also have, how do I pronounce this right? Cornelius Keigo Oyamada, who did the all the synth work for the Twin Battle. So their sides.
Ah, yes. Oh, and I believe on the for the score, they actually had Dan the Automator doing the theme for the Ninja-esque DDR game Scott and Knives play in the arcade, Ninja Revolution.
Oh, neat. That's cool. There's a lot of production things I like about this movie, just like two stories.
Radiohead's producer, Nigel Godrich, doing a lot of the production, so of course it's going to be great.
And you had the front man of Sloan basically teaching the main leads, like from Sex Bomb, how to be in a band and how to play their instruments and how to act while playing. So that was cool. A lot of Canadian talent.
I think Chris Murphy should have been in a cameo in this movie for all the work he did.
Yeah, but what can you do? I always like some of the production details when I looked into it. Like, I love how anytime someone gets punched, there's like this button on the person's hand that when they clench their fist in contact, like a light goes off. It's almost like a trigger. It's a sensor on the button, so that's why there's so much like flashing every time there's a fight scene. And Edgar Wright, who was a little out of the gates here. This was definitely his biggest production at this point in his career. He actually asked 3 directors to help him, or he kind of like socialized, and 3 people helped him. The biggest one was Quentin Tarantino, who's a very close friend of his. And while he was on the set of Death Proof, Tarantino was like advising him how you shoot a fight scene, what the elevation is, because he studies this like intensely, and he's just like showing him like. And when he got his early screening of the movie, he's just like, "You need an opening credits sequence. I'm telling you, you gotta put one in there. It really sets the mood." And that's.
And boy, did he!
Yeah, and Edgar Wright did something pretty clever where every time you see the actor on the screen, you see like a little symbol or something that kind of pertains to the character they're playing. Like Anna Kendrick, she has like coffee stains on her card because she works at a coffee shop. And with Aubrey Plaza, she has like all those black bars that censor her language. Little cool details like that. And then there was Guillermo del... Oh yeah, I guess that's also where he would have met Mary Elizabeth Winstead, because she was on the set of Death Proof. And just as a favor, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but like during one of the date scenes, Edgar Wright took a shot of Ramona's feet during one of the scenes. And it's like, I did that as a favor for my friend. And Tarantino was like, hee hee. And then there's
I mean, it could have also been another creative Hollywood creative that is known for that.
Well, for like
but
feet.
Anywho.
And then there was Guillermo del Toro. Sorry, I said his name. And then there was Guillermo del Toro, who recommended Wright, martial arts expert Brad Allen, to help manage the stunt work for the movie. And as you can tell, it's really intense. And it's really good that Guillermo like sent him someone who knew what they were doing, because there's so much wire work and like intense like fight scenes with kinetic camera work. It's great. And then speaking of camera work, we also have Sam Raimi, who actually offered Edgar Wright like a little crash course on how to work with special effects, because it's an effects heavy extravaganza.
Oh, I bet. And it's not like Raimi's early stuff, which is all like practical.
It's a lot of digital stuff, which was getting pretty new at the time, but Raimi had some experience with the Spider-Man movies, and he was currently shooting Drag Me to Hell at the time, so we just brought him on board. It's like, so this is how you like set it properly, this is how you put green screen, how you put like wires and stuff, that kind of thing, which is kind of interesting, because I actually think the effects in Drag Me to Hell have aged terribly compared to like Scott Pilgrim, but it was very generous of him to do that for Wright nonetheless. And yeah, those are my notes for the production. It was would you give credit to the movie for at least doing its best at adapting the story?
I mean, I'd say so. I do know that there was nothing from the final volume of the graphic novel included in the film, because obviously they were trying to finish that. One of the fascinating things to me is that Edgar Wright stopped working on his Ant-Man screenplay while producing Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and like, so that's part of why he got dropped from that film.
Yeah, among other things, that's right.
It is really good though. The stunt choreography shows because when you got two people from the Jackie Chan stunt team doing the fight training, you're gonna be in good hands.
Yes, absolutely. How do you feel about the story about the alternate ending where Scott actually ended up with knives at the end?
Well, I mean, I, I'm glad that they ended up writing a proper ending to match the books because obviously, if the test screenings weren't going to be good, then of course you shouldn't stick with that.
Yeah.
Also, because she would have been like barely 18, and Scott is like 23 or 24 at that point, probably, and like that's not going to send a good message.
Yeah. I mean,
Especially if it's like 2009 or 2010. Imagine if this was in the early 2020s and they're trying to do this.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a disaster. I remember I had a friend of mine in a band who was like saying like, "Hey Lyle, who do you like better, Ramona or Knives?" I'm like, "Oh, Ramona easily," and he's like, "No, I think Knives is hot."
And that's all you had to say about that.
It's weird though because the actress was actually 3 years older than Michael Cera, so there you go with that. But yeah, I agree. Like I do prefer that Scott ended up with Ramona at the end because he's been like hell and back trying to fight all of her evil exes and solve the baggage. And I'm not saying that she's like a trophy or anything because it's not like he just wants her for the sake of it. He just literally wants to like he really wants to like peel back the layers and get to know her, but she always has like walls. So he develops a respect for her, and even though they both know that they have faults, they what's the word I'm looking for? They contend or they
Compliment?
well, not so much compliment. It's more like they atone for it. That's the word that was on
Yes, okay.
that was on the tip of my tongue. Yes, I hate when that happens, but yes, they atone for it, and I think they grow as a result. So it wouldn't have been the same with Knives, who's been like more or less pretty antagonistic and dealing with her own things. I think she could do better than Scott too. So yeah, she's got
it's kind of shown. Like I mean, when you're still a teenager, your everything, your worldview is still developing, and there was so much more out there for her.
Yes, exactly. So I think she'll definitely be okay to be with someone else other than Scott Pilgrim. Yeah.
One of the main reasons to really rewatch the film adaptation soon is just to see the sheer set pieces in terms of actual places they filmed in or near that are either not there anymore or have changed a lot in the last decade plus. I keep using that length of time because a lot of Toronto is really represented. I mean, a lot. One of the producers actually said that the film is probably the biggest movie ever, quote unquote, quote, identifiably set in Toronto. There's a lot of stuff. There was stuff filmed in Casa Loma, Sonic Boom, the record store, the Witchwood branch of the Toronto Public Library, Lee's Palace, the Pizza at Bathurst and Bloor.
Yeah, there's a lot of Bathurst Street in this movie. They even walk by a Pizza with the classic. It's basically just like Mervish Theater, like that district, that whole area.
I believe I've been to that particular Pizza.
Yeah.
This is an addendum to the story from 2016 when the Olympics were on. Before that show, I went to get some dinner at that Pizza, sat in the booth and watched some of the Olympics there, and it felt like, wow, I'm living Scott Pilgrim for about half an hour.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know when I used to work as a cleaner, I would always have to go down Bathurst Street to get to work every morning, so it was interesting to see like a lot of locations pass by me. And yeah, I haven't been to Casa Loma yet, but yeah, I was close to that area once. But I'm sure it looks pretty much the same. It's just crazy, yeah. Honest Ed's doesn't exist anymore. Sneaky D's doesn't exist anymore. Things are definitely changing for sure. But that's
even the original mural for Lee's Palace. It was taken down, I think, after the film came out, and they actually reconstructed the old bar for scenes in there.
Oh, you mean like all the the graffiti art that was on Lee's Palace? That's not there.
I think no. It's more like I guess the bar had changed after a certain point.
No, it's been a long time since I've been there.
They reconstructed the Rocket Club because by that point it didn't. By the time they filmed in like 2009, it didn't exist anymore. A lot of it's a snapshot of what Toronto probably looked like to 20-somethings in the mid-late 2000s, which, considering most of us saw it when we were teenagers, it isn't exactly something we can say we relate to.
Mm-hmm. No,
But
that's
it's
true.
still, if you grew up or if you lived your teenager 20-something lives in that area, it would make sense.
Yeah, no, I would say it is definitely the most audacious movie set in Toronto, unless you count Videodrome, but that's neither here nor there. Or the F Word with Daniel Radcliffe. But yeah, so you mentioned there was a game.
There is.
Okay, I've played a little bit of it. I haven't played a lot of it, but it's a beat 'em up. It's a it's almost like River City Ransom. It's a beat 'em up
It
with
is. Takes a
RPG
lot of influence from that one.
with a lot of RPG elements. You can increase your character's stats and eat to retain your health or change outfits and stuff. Can run around the frosty, apparently dangerous streets of Toronto where everyone just wants to kick your ass all the time. That's a beat 'em up for you.
And there's the subspace highway sections where you basically can attack flying piggy banks and, basically punch all the blocks to get coins. With the video game, it was an interesting idea in that it on the surface it was just a licensing thing, but it became so much more, and much like the film, it gained such a big cult following in the few years afterward because all of a sudden there were teenagers that saw it, when it first came out, the movie, and now they're in their early 20s and they want to experience this Toronto, and it doesn't really exist anywhere close to that same form that it was either depicted in the books or in the film. The game itself came out only a few days before the film on August 10th, 2010, at least in North America. And then towards the end of 2013, it was delisted off of both PSN and Xbox Live, where those were the only two platforms it came out on. But there was such huge demand for this game because so many people only really found Scott Pilgrim after the game got delisted, and then they were watching the movie and they wanted to enjoy this game. Fast forward to last fall, and Ubisoft announces that they are doing a sort of 10th anniversary-esque remaster or re-releasing of it for current gen systems and PC. Then it got delayed to this past winter, but still. So in January of 2021, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, was re-released finally for PS4 and PS5, Xbox One and Series X and S, Switch, PC through Ubisoft Connect and the Epic Game Store, Google Stadia, and Amazon Luna. Those last two, I don't quite get those because they're mostly streaming services, but after almost a decade, people have a way to play this game again, and it's really fun. Plus, it comes with the 2 DLC packs that have Knives and Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to talk about an even better Scott Pilgrim affiliated soundtrack, Anna Monoguchi is fantastic, and I will not hear otherwise.
So all the soundtrack from the game.
Yeah, the game soundtrack is it's chiptune, which is essentially, think of like an 8 or 16-bit video game score, but it's got a bit more of a rock tinge.
Well, that's the style.
Scott sounds like another winter Scott Pilgrim anthem. The general level themes are really catchy and enjoyable, and just the fact that they've made a way for people to play it again is great. Aside from some stuff like the Blu-ray being released a few years ago, I don't know if it was a UHD 4K type one or just a standard. It was on Netflix until I think this past October, like this last few weeks, and then it was removed. But with the game, Limited Run Games actually did a physical run earlier this year where you could order it for a month. There was a base tier where it was just the game. There was a classic edition which had a Sega Genesis type of clamshell case with a bunch of bonuses in the game. Or there was a KO edition which had like a bunch of figures and a replica of the stage and a whole bunch of other stuff. I only got the classic edition, but as something that was delisted for so long, and this is an important thing when we live in an age where games are mostly being pushed to be purchased digitally, and then publishers can just remove it whenever they want. Always purchase physical, because it's so good to have this particular game back. And I even played it again a few days before just to brush up my skills. And I tried to do one of the sort of side modes, the boss rush, and I actually beat it with barely any health left, but that was a fun challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice throwback to like retro gaming, like you said, of the 8 and 16-bit era, which is coming back in a huge way, honestly.
Oh, definitely.
And yeah, it's very rare for a licensed game to actually get a re-release because of like copyrights and like properties and all that. It's not easy, but for a game like this, I'm glad that they actually gave it a revival because yeah, everyone was buzzing about it. And it's kind of unfortunate the reason why it was like not really easily distributable because for some reason Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was not a huge hit at the box office. It actually underperformed by quite a lot, and yeah, Edgar Wright's movies aren't usually that bad in terms of box office, but I guess it just didn't grab people. Maybe people were getting a little tired of Michael Cera. I don't know. But yeah, it was a shame, but I'm glad it's developed into a sort of cult classic banner now, and a lot of people respect it a lot better than they used to. And yeah, I would say it's probably one of the best films of its decade, despite how early it came out in the 2010s.
I think it's pretty good. I do still enjoy it a good bit. There are parts of it I kind of contest with and have issues, but again, some of that does fall in the period in which it came out. It was the dawn of the 2010s. Who would have thought just 4 or 5 years later, tones could change really quickly? But at least the game maintains a lot of that, what I guess you could call youthful innocence. And if anyone is at least interested in the game, it goes on sale. I mean, at the time we're recording this, it's November of 2021. Black Friday could very well be coming up in a few weeks. The holiday season in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So keep an eye on it and see if it goes on sale. And who knows, maybe in a year or two it'll be on Steam. It's like a $20 game right now, and it's been on sale at least once every 2 months this year. It's been as low as $10 at the end of September. So if it hits $10 or less, get it.
I don't know how to transition to our next topic, but I remember when I was rereading the books for the first time. I guess that's not rereading, just going through the series for the first time. I stumbled upon a comment thread that just started saying, like, she saw Ramona Flowers and felt so empowered by a movie made in Hollywood. I'm like, what is this? And I copied the link and I looked it up, and it's a song which goes by the name Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Ruined an Entire Generation.
A whole generation.
It ruined a whole generation. Sorry, my phone's really slow.
Of women.
Of women, yes.
I told you it was long.
Scott Pilgrim vs. the World ruined a whole generation of women, yes. And this song is basically an attack on the alt-girl scene and girls who like to dye their hair and like listen to like, indie and stuff. Basically sharing a lot of characteristics with the character of Ramona Flowers, because that became like a whole style at the time. And yeah, it's incel-core music. It's like this kind of weird sub-genre where like people, it's almost like indie music or anything, where you just record in your bedroom, heavily distorted, just tries to be offensive for the sake of it, I guess. I don't know how sincere.
There's a lo-fi-ness to things
very,
like this.
very lo-fi.
I've heard the song, and I mean, it's more, I think it's supposed to be a satire of a scene that sprouted up after the movie came out. And if you weren't necessarily on sites like Tumblr, for example, you may not have necessarily even noticed it was a thing, but it still kind of is. And I mean, I definitely can respect the hook work, because I have heard the song, and there's even someone actually made a custom for Rock Band 3 of it, which I have shown you.
That blew my mind. You can play negative XP on Rock Band. I'm sure he'd
Unofficially, but yes.
Okay.
Now, obviously, I understand why there would be ire towards it, but
oh yeah,
I sort of come to respect negative XP, because he does have good hook work. He's doing all right. He's obviously not my favorite by any means, but I don't outright hate it as much as you thought I might.
Yeah. I know when I brought it up, you were a little, you seemed a little upset, but that's okay. Yeah, no, he's interesting. Definitely the most popular person in the scene, probably the frontliner in a lot of ways. And yeah, the Scott Pilgrim song is his biggest song. It's the biggest song of the entire scene, really. It's got media attention. He's been on interviews. He's been like, And he seems pretty nonchalant about it. Like, it doesn't seem like he has vitriol or anything in his blood. He just kind of made the song almost as a joke. You can hear him, like, laugh in between, like, his vocal takes, which is pretty amusing. I have shown it to some people. They got pretty upset about it. They thought he was being, like, incredibly judgmental and harsh and misogynistic, which you could interpret it that way. I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't take that away from you, but it's just that's the thing about incel-core. I really don't know if it's like all a joke or some of it's a joke. There are people out there who don't treat it like a joke. A lot of far-right leaning people in the scene, which kind of goes against my personal beliefs, but you know, I won't take that away from them.
It kind of the line between being subversive and shitposting. But at the same time, there are forms of indie music where, you know, or even comedy music where there are things that you can't tell whether they're actually supposed to be funny or not because it is the subjectivity factor.
Yeah.
You know, for not to compare it too much, but say a group like Psycho Stick, they are a comedy band, but they can sometimes lean more on the heavy side, but sometimes, you know, it doesn't push humor doesn't always push the PC boundaries as much as some people would think.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's also kind of like, again, with social media, things have evolved to the point where, you know, sometimes more things would be hot button issues and then other stuff wouldn't be so much, whereas sometimes now it can feel like anything can be interpreted as such.
Yeah. To quote The Simpsons, unless you're being ironic, turn that off right now. Oh, so, yeah, speaking of, like, hot button issues and things like that, do we want to share any sort of like criticisms or mild things that we have about Scott Pilgrim that might like just a few issues we may or may have, because it's kind of interesting to discuss that.
I think so. I mean, especially the fact that it's at least with the graphic novels, especially so with the movie, Scott's own flaws are not really addressed as much as it seems to focus on Ramona. And I think part of it is, you know, it's the mid-late 2000s. You know, there's not much of an attempt to really have it be as female-centric as if it were written now. You know, like Scott basically slacks off, and he's not the greatest person either. And he's, you know, he's done dumb things. And like I said, the whole plot point about he thought he rescued Kim when he actually beat some random guy up and essentially blacked out and didn't remember it for a long time. You know, but no, the story's about him and his, you know, efforts to date someone. And I suppose the whole idea of having to literally defeat, like actually kill people that someone used to date in order to keep dating them. This is obviously me taking things literally, but I'm sure there are like some red flags that are being ignored if this was to be interpreted in a modern context.
Yeah, I've wondered what happens to the exes after they get defeated. Like, do they officially die? I actually had a theory that after, like, Scott defeats Gideon, like, his controls release, so everyone just kind of wakes up in bed, almost like they respawn.
That was another darker thing I kind of had a major issue with in the graphic novels, is that Gideon is actually, like, he has actual serious issues, more so than Scott and some of the other exes, because he actually very much like almost Snow White-esque. He keeps women that he used to date even for a brief time and keeps them in some sort of chamber. Like,
yeah.
Like, there's a thing at the end of the last volume where, like, you see they all get released and some of them, like, don't even remember what happened to them.
Yeah.
Modern context.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, so that's the thing. As much as I like Jason Schwartzman's portrayal of Gideon in the film, it's a little bit more lighthearted, quote unquote, in terms of
they
how
toned
it
him
goes in
down.
the books.
They toned him down quite a lot, and I think he kind of had to, because in the comics he's like a maniac.
Which makes sense in that medium because you had more time to flesh out the story. But in a 90 to 100 minute film, let's say, you have to condense that all to where it's not pressed for time.
Mm-hmm.
See, Ramona as a character, again, the whole idea of, you know, you're making someone defeat all your exes before you can date them, that's a little much. But there was the one line that even in the books, the whole idea of she only dated Roxy for like a little bit because she was going through a phase. If you want to talk about things that really don't age well now,
Yeah.
like I guarantee if this series was written in the 2020s, like I'm sure Roxy would have been like a major. That would have been the halfway point of the book because it takes a whole aside to focus solely on that. I mean, I don't think it's as like counterculture in that sense friendly as it thinks it is, especially because as we mentioned, the ending with Stills' character turn feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So then for Ramona to basically almost hand wave away like her reasoning for dating Roxy is like, you know, that whole like I was bi-curious. Like, well, honey, I'm a little bi-furious.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is kind of like it is brushed aside a lot more than it doesn't tackle the
and
very...
not to mention the G-spot thing in the film. It kind of felt like that was just, I don't know which executive suggested that stay in, but that feels like a little much. It feels like it's trying to over-sexualize that whole aspect.
I can see what you mean. Yeah, it was
And the whole adding, of course, you'll never be able to do this. There, I'm like, movie. We don't need to know what they get up to. We know Scott fucks like that Fred guy.
Fred fucks. Oh my god.
I can't ever not use that joke in any of these episodes. I'm sorry.
I feel so bad for Fred fucks. It's not even how you pronounce his name, but he's gonna suffer. I bet he suffered that most of his life. But we're getting off topic.
I'm sure he's accepted it at this point.
I'm sure it's worth a laugh. Yeah.
What's a minor flaw? Young Neil really doesn't get a lot of focus, as I've said.
No.
Because in the beginning of the film, he's just chilling, playing Zelda on his DS. Because that's when this came out. This was a year or two before the 3DS came out. Not even a DS Lite, a fat DS.
Yeah, I used to have those. I could play Game Boy games. That was cool. I missed that.
Yeah, you didn't have to pay extra for them.
Yep. No, you're right. He is kind of like a very, very minimal character. The only time he really like shows up to do anything is when he replaces Scott for his position in the band.
Young Neil, you have learned well. You will now simply be known as Neil.
He's like, whoa! I like that part. I guess you could call that an arc.
Oh, here's a major thing that even back in the day, I never understood why they tried to do this in the comics. That Halloween party, there was the one panel where Knives and Kim are making out briefly, and it's just like completely ignored.
Yeah, that does not go anywhere.
That just felt like it was. I wouldn't say. Maybe I would say it was added for shock value, but in the game, however, they do actually reference that.
They get
with the thing about the game is each character has their own ending, and I believe in the Kim ending, Knives basically walks past Scott, or it's either the Kim or Knives ending where Knives walks past Scott, and Knives and Kim end up together.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily shock factor or maybe fan service. I don't know.
It could be. Like, that's the thing. There is a little bit of fan service in the books, but it's not to an extreme degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's also kind of like, well, I'm sure also, if Brian wanted, he could make it as raunchy as he wanted to, but like in a PG-13 movie that's focused more on violence, the sexy times are going to play second fiddle.
Oh, that's the thing about Scott Pilgrim. It deals with adult issues, but it is like it's pretty classy about it for the most part. Other than like, they mostly just kiss. It's not like sometimes Ramona will take her skirt off, but it's just like she's still. We're not going to see these characters.
There was the whole scene where like they're making out and Scott's playing the bass with the angel wings.
Yeah, that was fun. I can relate to that. But
oh man, just the one. This is more of a positive. The whole, like, the thing where, like, Ramona's reading off all the teeth she has. I don't know if that was in the books also, but just, like, the consistency of that line read.
She memorized that, eh? She wasn't reading.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
And the people on set were like, no, we have a list here. It'll be easier for you. And she's like, oh, I'm good. Then she reads the entire list. I
wouldn't expect anything less from Royal Pain.
Yeah, exactly. I do say that I've heard people complain there's a bit of a diversity issue with Scott Pilgrim?
Well, this is something from 2010 being looked at in 2021. Of course, in that context, there's going to be a diversity issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, even like back in the early 2000s, it's mostly just white people and like people of Asian descent and South Asian descent. I think there's only one black character in the entire book, and she's just like Scott Pilgrim's boss at the cafe, and
Yeah,
that's about it.
yes. That's another thing where if they ever do remake this series, that will definitely be addressed. I mean, there's parts of the tone of the books and the film where at some points it's like this could either be a really good like indie film or like a YA film or an episode of Riverdale.
Yeah, or even Community.
I guess like Community if it tried to like parody what it thinks YA culture is.
Yeah, or just goes all in on the video game elements.
I also wish Scott's parents were more present in the film because it's only ever really alluded to that he literally lives across the street from his parents' house. But in the books, they're at least a little present, I think, in the second half of the series.
Yeah, they show up, and yeah, I always completely forget Scott has a brother, and that's where he got his base from. It was a hand-me-down.
Yeah. Again, the film neglected to tell us that part.
It wasn't important, really.
This is more of like, I wish they had done this more in either the game or the other stuff. I believe in the movie only, he's wearing a red t-shirt that has the bass icon from Rock Band on it.
Yep, he does.
So I imagine they had to pay Viacom, CBS/MTV Games a little bit to have that license.
Yeah.
What I wish they had done in the books, because in the movie, the battle between the Kariyanagi twins and Sex Bomb, where it's basically a supercharged battle of the bands.
Yeah.
I wish that was in the books, because that's one of the things where the movie did something different that actually really worked.
It's more cinematic, yeah.
Yeah, well, like emphasizing the power of music can take some sort of metaphysical form.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the showdown in the books, but you are right, it is a lot more dramatic. Even though the characters in the movie, like the twins, are like, they're not developed at all. They're just there.
No, and that's another thing where I'm like, they could have developed them more, and that's what happens when you choose to prioritize certain X's over others. Because obviously with the idea that Gideon, or G-Man as he's initially known, the whole reason that Sex Bomb's even trying to do all these battles of the band is to get signed by him.
Yeah.
So that it sort of ties it together. Because in the book, the actual music playing part wasn't really focused on as much. It didn't really give any of the characters it only really gave the characters meaning in the film. Because in the books, they're just doing it as a side thing.
Yeah, they might go somewhere with it, or they might not. They're not all that dedicated to it. When you write,
and like for example, Kim works at a video store. I think it's brought up in the film as well that he can't borrow anything from the store because he owes too many late fees.
Yeah, that's in the book. I don't know about the movie, but yeah, Kim works at a video store. God damn it.
Back when they all work at a video store, then it'll be like that film where the people work at the video store. You know, and then you're closed.
Oh yeah, Clerks. For some reason I thought High Fidelity, but like those aren't videos. Those are records.
But there's High Fidelity, there's Empire Records, there's Cadillac Records, there's that other records one. No, Cadillac Records is completely different.
Or you could go with Be Kind Rewind. That's set in a video store.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
The funny thing about the late fees in the game, though, as an aside, is when you actually do build up enough money to pay off the late fees, you get access to like a bunch of special moves, I think, or like special things in one of the stores. That store, yeah. That's
a really cool level of detail. Yeah, I can see why people latched onto that game so much.
The online multiplayer aspect is fun. As a bit of a nitpick in the film, like it's mostly just Scott fighting one-on-one with someone. Only in the Roxy fight does Ramona actually do any actual combat.
Well, and the twins, the whole band gets together to fight them too.
Yeah, well, that's the Battle of the Band scene, though. That's really for like a 2 or 3 minute scene at most.
It's pretty quick, yeah. Not too challenging, honestly. I love how Scott had to like duct tape his base together, though. That was a funny idea because it got destroyed in the first wave.
This would have been funny if they did it in the film. I understand why, but in the video game, the bass battle is interpreted as Todd doing this like crazy Guitar Hero Rock Band-esque like button combination, and then all you do for Scott is press one button and he just hits him.
Yeah,
and then Todd flips him off.
Yeah, because he's a one-note douchebag. He can't do very much.
I get that now. I've always thought, I wonder what would happen if I basically just let it keep going on, if it would just like eventually just like go act as if you didn't press the button, just like go ahead anyways, or if it would like keep repeating itself.
Oh, probably. Yeah. It's really cool they actually incorporated Guitar Hero into a bass battle like that. That was like the highlight for me. But then it's like they added that layer to it. So maybe we should start wrapping up here. Do you have any final thoughts on Scott Pilgrim or?
Well, after I've read the books a couple times. I think the last time I reread them was probably in the last 18 months.
Yeah, me
they
too.
are actually pretty easily accessible because Hoopla, which is like various library systems, have that website where you can borrow ebooks and music and movies and all that stuff. I read the color versions a few times again through there. It's been good to go back to it. I'm not opposed to it coming back now, but I think at least the video game coming back means that teenagers and young adults today will have some way to get into the series. I wish it was still on Netflix, at least in Canada, but I'm sure obviously there's ways to find it. Maybe I'll get a Blu-ray of it someday, maybe not. But I've seen the film enough times to be satisfied with it. And hell, maybe I'll go play the game this weekend again.
Yeah, why not? I thought it was really nice when you posted me that link of like most of the crew because like last year was their 10th year anniversary.
Yes, two other things.
Okay.
So there was Scott Pilgrim versus the Animation, which was essentially part of the first chapter of the second book, but as an actual TV short. It aired on Adult Swim in 2010. It was animated by Titmouse, who are the animation studio behind Metalocalypse and a bunch of other shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was neat. They had Michael Scott. They had Michael Scott back as Michael. Oh, damn it, Michael Cera.
They had Steve Carell. Awesome. He should have been Scott's dad.
Steve Carell. I love Ramona. Now, Michael, are you saying you love Ramona? I love Envy. I love Kim. I love.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. Michael, are you just saying who you love inside the last few pages? I love knives. Okay, Michael. But why did I do an Anchorman reference for Michael Scott? I do not know. But anyways, yeah, the animated short's pretty great. They use Post Acid by Waves throughout most of it, and that rocked because that song was huge back in the early 2000s.
Voiced Lisa in that.
By who?
That one. Mae Whitman, who played Roxy in the film, voiced Lisa in the animated
I thought she sounded a little familiar, yeah. And Alison Pill comes back to do the voice of Kim. Yes. The same kind of delivery, too. It's like, Scott, this sucks. Yeah.
One of the neat things if you want to look at the animation, you can find it on YouTube very easily. But last year, one of the neat things was Entertainment Weekly did a nearly full reunion of the cast for the 10th anniversary, and they did a table read. And you can find the video on YouTube. It's a really great watch because they weren't able to get Captain Marvel or the guy from Succession,
Brie Larson,
or someone else. I'm just calling I'm referring to them as the characters people may actually know them.
So Brie Larson and Kieran Culkin didn't show up?
They weren't able to make it. But I don't know if there was anyone else missing. The guy that played young Neil, Johnny Simmons.
Yeah, man, I haven't seen him since Perks of Being a Wallflower.
And I saw him, I think, in some film a few years ago. But they got almost everyone else, and they had Edgar Wright, Michael Bacall, and Brian Lee O'Malley, and essentially Brian would do sketches of all the characters at certain points. They were auctioned off to support the charity Water for People. I definitely recommend you watch the table read video. It's really fun to see that a lot of the actors still have that charm and that wit from their roles, and especially because you can see they got Chris Evans up until the part where Lucas Lee bites it, but they got friggin' Captain America for a good chunk of this, but they couldn't get Captain Marvel. You gotta take the wins where you can get it.
That's pretty cool, and that shows that everyone on that set must have really had a good time, because usually that you can't get everyone for a table read like that. So the fact they got the vast majority of the cast,
absolutely,
that's really cool. And it
is funny seeing Anna Kendrick basically read the parts of Envy, because it's like she's just really having fun with it.
Oh man, Freud would have a field day. But yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, it's a good note to end on. Overall, it was neat to see the 10th anniversary of Scott Pilgrim being celebrated to such an extent. It was all over online when I was on Facebook or Instagram. I just saw so many people post about it, and it's a little bit too bad we missed the mark on that. We're a year off, but that's okay. It was fun.
Well, the game only came out early this year, so it missed the 10th anniversary too. Don't worry about it.
Okay, now I don't feel so bad. But yeah, it's really fun to go back and revisit Scott Pilgrim. It's nice to see like an iconic Canadian fictional character that got pretty widespread interest for sure. And Brian Lee O'Malley, I hope he's doing well. He's definitely made something of himself for sure with this series, and I hope that everything else he does is I wish him all the best with his future endeavors. Essentially,
we should go over some of our favorite dialogue from the film to close this out, because there's a lot of good picks.
Okay. Most of my favorite lines come from Todd Ingram, so you can go first.
Yeah. Unless you have to go pee due to boredom.
I kind of do, actually. But that's neither here nor there. So anyways, what's one line he does? It's like, you better say your prayers, because you're going to be, I'm going to turn you to dust. And the cleaning lady, she dusts. Wait, sorry? You'll be dust by Monday. That's Friday today.
I got the whole exchange here if you want it.
Okay, read it out.
Tell it to the cleaning lady on Monday. What? Because you'll be dust by Monday. Because you'll be pulverized in 2 seconds. The cleaning lady, she cleans up.
She dusts.
She dusts. So, what's on Monday? Because it's Friday now. She has the weekends off, so Monday, right? Basically, you can't win this fight, so you better give up on this girl, because Todd's going to kill you. You used to be so nice. Scott, we're going to go to Pizza for a slice. Call us when you're done.
I love how his friends don't give a shit. They're just like, oh, we're going to go eat.
Yeah, because like, it'd be funny if it is an alternate movie, it was just the gang goes to Pizza. It's Always Sunny in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then just Frank shows up, because everything needs more Danny DeVito.
Oh, God. Yeah, I love the vegan police when they just burst into the scene. Because Scott actually...
Milk and eggs, bitch.
Milk and eggs, bitch. Wait, chicken parm's not vegan? And then it's, oh yeah. And
you were vegan, but now you will be gone.
Such a shitty line.
I guess someone does win with a head, but thank you, Paul Blart.
Oh, I love the part where Scott gets that intimidating email from Matthew Patel. He's like, this is so boring. Delete.
Scott, are you waiting by the door for your package to show up?
Oh God, that package. You remember that shot where he has to fling it from behind and it lands in the bin?
Oh yeah, and the blooper reel, it shows he misses it at least 3 or 4 times.
It took 30 takes to get that shot correctly.
Yes, I've seen the blooper reel.
I didn't know that, but that's astounding.
Of course. That's it, you cocky cock. You'll pay for your crimes against humanity. And then when Todd punches Knives, Neil's like, she punched the highlights out of her hair. You punched the highlights out of her hair.
Oh, didn't you know? Todd's vegan.
Todd's vegan.
Oh no. I'm sorry, we're just talking about Todd so much, but he's so entertaining. Like, my God, he's like Goku minus the meat diet. And then what others? I feel like we've touched on so many already, but oh, I love how Knives has like a freak out and she buys like hair dye. It's like, I have a plan. I'm gonna get that fat ass out of his life. Her friends.
It definitely felt very anime-esque dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's melodramatic.
Sure, the delivery was intentional. Oh, I love at the end. Okay, I think the way they close it out, the whole like in the movie, you know how Scott basically finally defeats Skid. He's like, I'm hip. I'm what's hot. I'm blowing up right now. You are blowing up. Right now. Kicks him in the head.
And there's Wallace's immortal line. He's like, you're too good for him. Run. Okay, Wallace.
Oh, and of course there is one of the more iconic exchanges of dialogue. Let's see here.
Yeah, I can't remember it all. It's been a little while for me, unfortunately. Maybe like Scott.
This is good garlic bread. Yeah, I think garlic bread would have to be my favorite all-time food. I could eat it for every meal, or just constantly without stopping.
Then you get
Then
fat.
You get fat. No, why would I get fat? Because bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat? Oh god, I did a dub smash of that a long time ago. I looked so young and I had hair back then, but it's like, oh, I'll have to show that clip.
I could honestly eat it for every meal, or just eat it all the time without even stopping.
You get fat.
No, why would I get fat?
Bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat?
But anyways, yeah, that's a good note to end on. Overall, Scott Pilgrim rocks, and if you haven't read or seen it, you should at least check it out. It's pretty great stuff. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I think he just left. Really? Yeah, sorry.
I love that shot.
Well, thank you all for watching and or listening, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, see you, everyone.
Continue. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Game over.